If a person decided to build a perpetual motion machine, he would face a ban in the form of a physical law. In contrast to this situation, there is no law in biology that would affirm the obligatory finiteness of each individual's life, said the American physicist, Nobel Prize winner Richard Feynman. The problem of death, considered as the final stage of life, has occupied the minds of philosophers for centuries and served as an object of deep reflection. Each philosopher offered his own view not only on the phenomenon of death, but also on closely related aspects of life, immortality of both body and soul. These issues not only occupied a central place in philosophical works, but also attracted the attention of religious thinkers, and were reflected in the cultural traditions of various peoples. In antiquity and the Middle Ages, many philosophers, including Plato, Aristotle, Seneca, Thomas Aquinas, and others, expressed their views on the nature of death, its place in human life, and the possibility of immortality. Religious doctrines, in turn, often provided answers to questions about the fate of the soul after death and the prospects of immortality in a spiritual sense. In the modern world, this topic does not lose its relevance. With the deepening of scientific knowledge, philosophical reflections, and a wide exchange of cultural views, more and more people are paying attention to questions about the existence of immortality, the fate of the soul, and the body after death. These issues not only continue to be the object of interest and research, but also form the basis for deep spiritual reflection and the search for meaning in human existence. When we talk about immortality, of course, it is primarily the absence of aging, and it is important to understand what causes is processed biologically and what are its features. Aging leads to changes in the body, making it more susceptible to various diseases. The main causes of death from old age include chronic diseases, cardiovascular, diabetes, cancer, decreased immunity, loss of muscle mass, atherosclerosis, impaired functioning of internal organs, and mosaic instability of the genome. All these factors interact, creating conditions for senile diseases and death. All this is due to the aging of cells in the body. Aging is sewn into the program code of all cells, and it is this mechanism at the microscopic level that is our key interest. Telomeres are the structural components of the ends of chromosomes located in the cell nucleus. They play an important role in maintaining chromosome stability and are involved in the regulation of cellular aging and division. Telomeres are a sequence of repeating nucleotides. During each cycle of cell division, the telomeres are gradually shortened. Since the enzymes involved in the process cannot completely copy the end sections of DNA, the shortening of telomeres serves as a kind of chronometer of cellular aging. When the telomeres reach a critical length, the cell stops dividing and eventually undergoes the process of apoptosis, programmed cell death. Modern research is aimed at finding ways to slow down the aging process and prevent its complications, that is, scientists are looking for a way to maximize life and potentially get closer to immortality. Today, let's talk about immortality as a potentially possible path of human development. One of the advantages of immortality is that diseases will no longer be an obstacle, and therefore we will be able to save significant funds on medical care. But it is important to note that we are not considering immortality in the context of fantasy superhero movies where characters survive after jumping from buildings. We are talking about the possibility of avoiding death from old age, and perhaps this discovery is already ahead. The idea of immortality has long attracted the attention of mankind, remaining one of the main beliefs in various cultures and religions. However, let's imagine that immortality will become a reality, and people will really be able to live forever. What changes could it bring to society? One of the first changes would be the impact on population growth. Endless life expectancy will lead to a constant increase in population, which can potentially cause problems of overpopulation and depletion of resources. Solving these problems will require the development of new technologies and systems that ensure sustainable food production and the use of alternative energy sources. Another change will be a challenge to traditional social norms. The concept of aging and the natural end of life is deeply rooted in culture, and its loss will require significant changes in the perception of the meaning of life and human nature. In addition, it will be necessary to answer the question of how people will use their extra time. The main request facing them, immortality, would have an impact on the economy as well, since people would continue to work indefinitely. This would lead to the creation of new jobs and stimulate economic growth. However, the retirement age and the concept of working life would have to be revised, as well as the allocation of resources for the elderly. In the medical field, advances in life extension are likely to lead to new discoveries in the field of regenerative medicine, allowing you to preserve youth and energy. However, it will also create ethical dilemmas regarding acceptable forms of intervention and the question of who will have access to these treatments. In terms of interpersonal relationships and family dynamics, immortality will have a profound impact. Family structures will change as people will outlive their spouses and children, and the traditional notion of inheritance will lose its relevance. The question of how property and wealth are distributed after death will also require rethinking. Immortality will also affect the perception and formation of relationships. Perhaps people will reconsider their close ties and family structures, given the infinity of time. Immortality raises complex ethical issues related to the allocation of resources, responsibility to the next generations, and many other aspects of social life. It is also very interesting how the brain adapts to immortality, since we were not originally designed for such a scenario. Most of the key mechanisms of the psyche are related to understanding the finiteness of life. The assumption of immortality can cause a variety of reactions in the human psyche, depending on individual characteristics, cultural influences, and beliefs. Here are a few possible aspects that may affect the psychological response. The idea of immortality can cause fear of the unknown, endless time, and the possibility of losing the meaning of life. People may worry about how they will fill their eternal existence, and what consequences this may have for their mental state. Psychologists have expressed concerns about the potential negative consequences of eternal life for humanity. They suggest that the possible loss of brightness and pleasure in life, as well as the prospect of a long routine, can cause mental heaviness for people. Some believe that endless existence can be analogous to burial alive, as it carries the threat of loss of meaning and fear of lack of diversity. Immortality can confront a person with deep questions about the truth of the meaning of life, the purpose of existence, and his place in the world. These existential arguments can trigger an internal search and revision of values. If there is no end of life, people may face a potential loss of motivation to achieve goals and strive for development. The idea of endless time can reduce the sense of urgency. At the moment, research is constantly underway on increasing life expectancy and immortality, as well as their impact on the planet's resources, which are very relevant in the scientific community. These studies are often focused on understanding the impact of population growth and changing age structure on resource use, ecosystem, and social systems. There is such a job. The limits of planetary service provision. Planetary boundaries is a concept proposed by a group of scientists in 2009, including Johan Rockström. It aims to identify critical ecological and climatic boundaries beyond which the sustainability of ecosystems and the planet can be disrupted. The concept is designed to help identify the limits that must be met in order to maintain favorable conditions for life on Earth. Here's what it looks like. It is important to monitor the level of carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere, which should not be exceeded in order to avoid catastrophic climate change. It is also necessary to determine the amount of water that can be sustainably consumed by mankind. In order to maintain ecosystems and prevent water scarcity, it is necessary to preserve biological diversity. Changing biodiversity, certainly linked to maintaining sustainable levels of species diversity, and protecting ecosystems to ensure environmental sustainability. It is also important to develop management of nitrogen and phosphorus levels in the environment can be a key aspect to prevent excessive concentrations of these elements, which can cause pollution and other negative consequences. It is also related to the level of air pollution, including the effects of aerosols and other harmful substances. The use of the oceans should be determined by the level of industrial activity and ocean pollution that can be maintained without harming marine ecosystems. The use of the Earth should be conditioned by the reasonable use of resources in order to eliminate soil degradation. But if the issue of resources is so acute, shouldn't we just explore other planets? Yes, discussion of human immortality is impossible without raising the issue of the exploration of exoplanets. At the moment, the exploration and colonization of exoplanets is not possible for several key reasons. The first and most obvious one is that today, we do not have technologies that allow completely safe and long-term flights to the nearest stars or exoplanets. The distances in space are huge, And even with close distances, like those to the nearest stars, to journey will take decades or even centuries, right? Stop. But in the case of total immortality, we just need to get more books and board games with which we can pass a couple hundred evenings. Go in further. Long-term space flights, zero gravity and radiation exposure pose serious challenges to human health. Scientific research in this area is still ongoing. Well, we discussed this earlier. If we are immortal, then we don't get sick. We cross it off the list of problems. Space missions require huge financial and technical resources. Today, humanity is focused on the exploration of near space, such as the Moon and Mars. Well, he just has a little patience, a couple of hundred years to wait quietly to accumulate the necessary resources. We have eternity ahead. Where's the hurry? The search for suitable planets is currently very difficult and imperfect. Colonization requires the discovery of habitable exoplanets. Current methods of detecting exoplanets make it possible to identify their existence, but detailed information about their atmospheres and conditions is not yet available, and so we write it into the plan while we collect resources and master new methods for studying exoplanets. Let me make an obvious conclusion. The achievement of immortality by mankind will certainly lead to the colonization of exoplanets. In conclusion, I want to share a motivating fact. According to scientific research, primitive people who lived 40 years ago had an average life expectancy of only 26 years. Until the middle of the XX century, this figure barely reached 35 years, and only by the beginning of the XX century it rose to 40. However, in recent decades, life expectancy has almost doubled. Anthropological studies indicate that an increase in the duration of the childhood and youth period is directly related to an increase in the post-productive period, which contributes to an overall increase in life expectancy. This may mean that the modern phenomenon of infantilism in society may be the result of a new stage of evolution, when people can live 20 to 30 years longer. Perhaps this is just the beginning of our amazing journey.